Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling.
Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Today's guest is Mike Long. Mike grew up in Newport Beach, California, where he quickly learned that the ocean was not only a place of beauty and life, but also one of the best natural playgrounds you could find. After studying environmental science and policy at the University of Colorado in Boulder, he focused his career on the oceans. Mike has worked on marine conservation initiatives all over the world, from the Maldives to Alaska. He has led direct action campaigns for Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, where he stood on the front lines defending whales in the San Ignacio Lagoon, and led the first partnership with the Ecuadorian government protecting sharks in the Galapagos. Now he's creating change in the fight to end marine plastic pollution as Director of Global Operations with Parley for the Oceans, which is a global community facilitating cross-collaboration with industry sectors, artists, leaders, and creative thinkers of all kinds. Together, they work to devise projects designed to raise awareness and protect the ocean. He resides in the Gulf of Maine, USA. However, he works full-time in the Parley head office in New York. With Mike, I felt straight away there's an immediate warmth to Mike as soon as you meet him. He's generous with his time, focused in his vision, and sincere with the words that he speaks. I feel that he's the true sense of someone who is taking real action to bring about real change. He's the true sense of an eco-warrior. Mike Long, welcome.
Thanks for having me. So kind, almost too kind there.
No, it's impressive, your resume. You know, I caught some of your talk at Green School the other day, and also I was at the Parley event at Commune, and I was really impressed with your story and the direction that you're trying to take conservation.
Yeah, I think I just learned a long time ago that for one, we only live once, and two, nature is really the essence of where we belong. So I've spent the majority of my life working in many regions around the world, doing what I can to protect it.
Yeah, so you've got to share the story about the San Ignacio Lagoon. So was that a protest? Can you explain in a bit more detail what happened there?
Yeah, well, maybe going back to sort of my initial initiation into Sea Shepherd Conservation Society may help. So, I don't know. It was soon after college. I was sitting in the mountains of the United States on the East Coast, as a matter of fact, and was watching the evening news. It may have been 60 Minutes or maybe the evening news with Peter Jennings there on NBC. And next thing you know, this amazing figure was on the screen with this big bushy beard and gray hair and this sort of pirate look to him. And he was really talking about giving whales a voice, giving the ocean a voice. So many times we say what's going on in the high seas or in the ocean is out of sight, out of mind. And here was this Captain Paul Watson really speaking from his heart and his soul in this unbelievably authentic way, how he was on this mission to end whaling in the Southern Ocean. And he spoke with such conviction and passion. I just was mesmerized. So I was like, man, I got to join this guy. I have to go join this fight. And I quickly bought a bus ticket. I remember hopping on just some Greyhound bus and heading a few hours away to the airport and boarded a flight to Seattle, landed in Seattle, and it was in the middle of the night, arrived at Lake Union and walked the plank onto the Ocean Warrior, this 180-foot North Sea trawler, steel riveted hull, and was introduced to Paul Watson. And that changed my life. I very quickly adapted to the life on a Sea Shepherd vessel. This was long before whale wars, so It was a time where we only had a few boats, and it was a wide variety of people from all walks of life who were sort of chasing the same dream and ambition to sort of join the fight to protect the ocean and protect marine wildlife. And so that was sort of the beginning. And we left Lake Union after some boat repairs, and ended up going out of the Strait of Juan de Fuca into one of the biggest storms I'd ever seen. We had 35, 40-foot seas. The boat was barely moving into the storm, doing probably 4 or 5 knots. And needless to say, made it out of there and headed down the coast of California. And that led us to sort of the first initiative on that voyage, which was the Battle of San Ignacio Lagoon, which is this amazing gray whale breeding ground. Mitsubishi or a few other corporate entities were there trying to sort of build a salt mine. And it was our way of, arriving and raising the flag and raising our voice against it. And they were defeated.
Wow.
So, that was sort of the, initiation to protest and activism. And, we as activists, I was born an activist in a lot of different ways. I think we all, as individuals have a unique opportunity to protest or become active in our own way and our own skill set.
You're comfortable with the term activist?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I think, my mindset has shifted a little bit. But with that said, I think, activism, the environmentalist is truly needed, especially in this stage of the game, each and every day. The problems that our environment faces, our ocean faces, we as humanity face, need activists. We need the strength in the trenches.
Just going back to what you were saying earlier, you said that you felt compelled to get on this Greyhound bus. Okay. Can you just go back to that moment in your life? Like what actually, like when you say you felt compelled, was it a voice in your head? Was it just a strong feeling you had to actually take that first step and actually be part of something bigger than yourself?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of different things. I grew up in Southern California. I was this beach kid, this California kid, and at an early age, my parents moved me to the East Coast. So I don't know what that move did to me, but I can kind of look back and say it almost like I lost my home or lost my sense of place as a child because of that move. Leaving friends, leaving a place of safety, of familiarity.
So how old were you?
Probably 11 or 12. I'm really bad with timelines now that I'm 45.
But that's a formative time in your life.
Yeah, I think so. And so that was a big change. And I think just this idea of, I think wanting to be a part of something greater than me for the common good made a lot of sense. I remember as a kid actually writing Greenpeace and calling them and asking how I could be a part of it. And I don't know if they didn't have the answers that I wanted. And so I thought it would be best to send them $20 or do whatever I can to get that T-shirt or get that badge. And I never got the T-shirt. For some reason, it never came in the mail. So it was quite interesting that I ended up working for Paul and becoming part of Sea Shepherd Conservation Society because, as you know, Paul was the co-founder of Greenpeace, and there was a little bit of controversy, to say the least, over the years between Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd. But, yeah, I think, it was just one of those times in my life where I wanted to be a part of something that just made sense to me. Yeah,
so, do you find that, it really helped to form your sense of identity?
Yeah, I think,
Even now?
All things we do sort of formulate our sort of overall livelihood and our plan and who we are and what we do and what we believe in. And yeah, I think, walking that dock in the middle of the night or boarding that bus for that matter was sort of like, growth.
Like you kind of stepped over the threshold and, often you hear people talk about, just getting completely out of their comfort zone. And I know for myself, for example, like, you know, I very much like to feel safe and in a place in my life where I am comfortable. But when you step into that zone of not knowing what's going to happen next, I feel like that's where a lot of magic happens. So.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think I don't like. I guess I don't like living necessarily safe. I like feeling a little bit on the edge, and I think that was really appealing to me. Like, you know, getting on a boat, and you know, it's funny when you're on a boat with Paul and the crew at Sea Shepherd. Everybody always wants to know, you know, where we're going and what we're going to do. Yeah. And not too many people know that on board, and so it's always like, well, you'll know when we get there. So
is that how he operates? Like, if you're on the crew, you just have to trust him to take you where he takes you.
I think at the time, our mission, was sort of, our mission was to go, engage and the protest and direct action against illegal fishing and illegal whaling activity on the high seas. That was really sort of, tier 1 mission. And, with that said, the fishermen and the whalers, and these people actively doing harm to the ocean, really engage our action. Sea Shepherd is a direct action organization, and they believe in storytelling. And Paul and Sea Shepherd Conservation Society over the years have done a tremendous amount of work, and bringing to light what's happened out there and what's going on each and every day. And they bring media, they bring the camera, and the camera is really the most powerful voice the gray whales have.
So you grew up in Newport till around the age of 12. I'm sure that would have been a great time. Is that part of Orange County? Is that what they call it?
Yes, that is Orange County.
So, you grew up surfing, skateboarding, things like that?
Grew up surfing, skateboarding, beach volleyball. Yeah. Everything the California kid dreams of doing.
And then, and you were sort of saying that's where you really developed your love of the ocean. And then your family moved to Maine from there? Where did you move from there?
Yeah, we moved to the Carolinas.
Yeah. Okay.
So we moved directly right into Charlotte.
And is that where you went to high school?
I did, yep. Went to Charlotte Catholic High School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good times or bad times?
Pretty good, I think, yeah.
High school's challenging for people.
Yeah, I think, it was just one of those times in my life, those years between sort of high school, or I guess, 6th, 7th grade in high school, where, I don't know, I just didn't really have a sense of myself.
Yeah. And so, would you consider yourself academic at school? Did you get good grades and stuff like that?
I got really good grades in the classes I believed in.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't do very well in religion.
But you're at a Catholic school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
So then from there, did you transition straight from high school to university?
Yeah, I did. I spent some time at College of Charleston and in Charleston, South Carolina, and I always had this dream of or this ambition to sort of go into the great unknown, to go out west and find the mountains, find the rivers, find more of nature. Yeah. And I think it was maybe my second year at the university there in Charleston where a buddy of mine said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Alaska." And I said, "Oh, yeah?" And he said, "Yeah, the salmon fishery is hiring, and you can go work in a cannery."
Right.
And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, and you can make a pile of money over the course of the summer, and
then have the rest of the year off."
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And so I was like, "Man, that sounds pretty cool." And so me and a buddy, T. Glenn, I'll never forget this guy. We
so what was his name?
T.
Yeah,
okay. T. T carried a notepad in his back pocket, and he was an English major, so he always thought through things before he said them, unlike me. And so he'd always write things down in this little black book, and I thought, man, I wish I could be more like that. I wish I could think before I say things. But
right.
I never was that person. But anyway, T. Glenn and I got in this car, and we went on this journey in his Ford explore out to Alaska. So we drove from Charleston, South Carolina to Ketchikan, Alaska, via ferry out of Prince Rupert, BC. And so we thought we'd go work at a cannery. And once getting to Ketchikan, I realized that I did not want to spend my summer in a cannery, that I wanted to spend my summer out on a boat out at sea.
You'll have to explain to me, a cannery, is that actually putting the fish into cans?
Yeah, so
like processing the fish.
Yeah, so in Alaska you have the salmon fishery. It's actually, if there is such thing as a sustainable fishery, it truly is well managed. So we, in Alaska you have seine boats, so commercial seiners, person-net seiners, and they're about 48 to 50 foot commercial fishing vessel with a crew of 3 to 5, and your captain. So I quickly realized I didn't want to be in the cannery. I wanted to be on the boat, and that seemed like a little bit more adventurous to me. So after walking the docks for a couple of weeks and begging for a greenhorn position on a seine boat, skipper and Captain Rocky Ertzberger finally allowed me the opportunity to come on board.
Is that their names?
Yeah, Rocky.
Can you say that again? Rocky
Ertzberger.
That's a classic.
Yeah, he's a legend, this guy. So I spent my first year just not really, understanding my role on the fishing boat, but came to love it. It was an amazing experience. We fished for wild salmon, ate really well. I grew a beard, got healthy.
Did you have
loved
stomach,
what I did.
You had the stomach for the ocean?
Oh yeah.
And that sea that you were on would have been the Bering Sea?
No, we were down in southeast Alaska.
Oh, southeast Alaska.
Yeah, pretty much on the inside.
Okay.
The whole time. Occasionally we'd venture out to the outside during the bigger sockeye runs. But yeah, it's kind of, a little ironic, Sea Shepherd Conservation Society than commercial fishing in Alaska, I know. But I don't know. I think that there's a place for everybody in this world, and there's ways to do things and ways not to do things. And that was the lesson there. But yeah, I commercial fished a few different years. The last year we fished on our boat, which was the Crest. We were off Prince of Wales Island, and early morning, and the seas picked up, the tide shifted. Everything that could have gone wrong on a commercial fishing boat went wrong, and we capsized. And the boat actually sunk.
Why?
Yeah, in 60 meters of water. Fortunately, we were able to, everybody on the boat was able to climb up onto the hull as it was going down. And we were saved more or less by our skiff man.
So you didn't have like a life raft?
No, well, every seine boat, you have a skiff, which is actually towing the other side of the net around to form this sort of semicircle where the fish swim into. And so the skiff man came around and grabbed us off the hull of the boat that was upside down at the time.
On the hull as it's going down.
Yeah, we were sitting on the hull. It was like self-preservation at its finest. Once we realized the boat was going over, we were like, climbing onto the hull, everybody up,
and the water would have been freezing.
Yeah, the water was freezing. It was pretty rough out, and we jumped. Yeah, we jumped into the skiff. I don't know how long this took. Could have been 30 seconds, but may have been 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we hopped in this aluminum skiff, and next thing you know, we were just watching, this boat with really all our personal belongings. It was pretty much everything we owned at the time on this boat. It was when life was much simpler. Everything fit into a red North Face duffel bag. Yeah. But so the boat sunk, and that was sort of the end of my commercial fishing career.
Right.
And didn't
want to go back after that
in Alaska. I don't know. I probably would have gone back. It wasn't. The sinking of the boat would not have deterred me. I remember getting picked up by another vessel, and the Coast Guard had called us to ask us, really what was happening. Was everybody safe? And the guy, this young kid on the other boat that picked us up, pulled an issue of Color magazine out, which was sort of a publication based on teleskiing. And he showed me the cover shot of the magazine, and he said, "You know who that is?" And I was like, "Who's that?" And it was this kid skiing down the chute, caught in an avalanche. He was like, "That's me." And I was like, well, that puts things into perspective. I'd much rather be on the hull of a sinking boat than on that.
With an avalanche.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's classic.
Mm-hmm.
Is Alaska as beautiful and as raw as
Alaska is one of those places that is truly amazing. I think it if you spend any amount of time there, like really any beautiful place on earth, that's raw and that is surrounded by nature. I think it just sort of like sticks with you. It manifests itself into your blood, and so I think for me, like Alaska was what truly what I consider like the last frontier, and
I've heard it
had
described
this,
as that.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's you have to really think about things. Think about where you're going, what you're doing, what you're bringing with you.
Yeah.
As John Krakauer wrote about in Hidden into the Wild, it's not a place you can mess around with. But yeah, I mean, Alaska was much more than, working on a fishing boat for me. Actually, after some time on board the Ocean Warrior with Paul, Sea Shepherd had been given an old fishing lodge in the middle of Misty Fjords National Monument, which is about 10 million acres of protected lands. And this lodge was in this place called Mink Bay. And Sea Shepherd at the time really was sort of not sure on what they wanted to do with it. Was it going to be this eco lodge? Was it going to be, a place they could train, Sea Shepherd crew? And so I said, I was talking to Paul, and I was like, "Hey, Paul, why don't I go out there and check this place out?" And he had been there a few times, and they needed somebody to caretake it. And meanwhile, so I said, "All right, I'll hop on a plane." So I flew back over to Ketchikan and hopped on Michelle. Michelle was this amazing bush pilot, and she had this little airlines called Island Wings. So I hopped on this bush plane with Michelle, and she landed at the docks of Mink Bay Lodge. And you want to talk about a beautiful place in the middle. I'm sorry?
Isolated?
So isolated. Yes, I think 65, 70 nautical miles from Ketchikan. I could be wrong with all this, but pretty close, I think. About a 45-minute flight into the middle of the Tongass. And it was an amazing place, an amazing experience. I lived there for, I think, about 6 months. And I remember to this day sitting out on the dock of Mink Bay Lodge and hearing this sound, and it was like, and I was sort of like looking up and looking around, and this whole pod of orcas came out of nowhere and swam all the way back into where the lodge was, into the bay. And I remember hopping in the kayak and literally kayaking with them and swimming with them for 2 days. And so it was me and this pod of orcas. They were feeding on the pink salmon run.
So just to clarify, you were out there by yourself? Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So for what, weeks on?
Well, I was out there by myself, and then we had another member of Sea Shepherd join me for a little while, a month or two, and then I had my dad come visit as well because it was so beautiful. It's
pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a good place on the map to share.
Wow.
So this pod of orcas, it was like a movie. Because they kind of stuck around for 2 days, and I remember when they left, they're so smart, these guys. They started breaching in the air and like swimming up onto the kelp rocks and scratching their bellies and rolling over, almost celebrating their departure. And they knew I was there watching. And I remember running down the beach like hooting and hollering, almost like giving them a goodbye. So yeah, it was just one of those stories that kind of stick with me, almost like they were giving thanks for us being around and doing what we could to protect them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, they're such amazing creatures. I mean, being a surfer, I've seen loads of dolphins, but I've never had the opportunity to see an orca in the wild. But do you feel like that time when you were out there did that really reinforce how you were feeling in terms of being a conservationist? Was that really formative time for you, like to just give you this deeper connection to the environment?
Yeah, I think, Jacques Cousteau has always said, right? I don't know if I need to give the quote, but the thing is this, like, and it's even what we do at Parley. The first thing you have to show people is the beauty.
Gotcha.
And then you could show them the fragility,
Gotcha.
right? And I think every time we as humans immerse ourselves in nature, no matter what that is, and it's different for everybody. When I was in Alaska, I read this book by Richard Nelson, and it was called The Island Within, and it's about his life in and out of Ketchikan, and sort of raising his family, in Alaska, and sort of his morning routine and his daily routine, which to many people probably in this day and time is probably quite boring. But it's really about finding the magic wherever you live.
Yeah.
Whether you're in the city, finding that spot that gives you comfort, that gives you the tree, that gives you the flower, the butterfly, whatever, or finding, this exposed mountain.
So that's interesting to me because you mentioned that now you work full-time in New York. Do you find those moments of solace in a big city like New York?
No. I mean, it's tough for me. So I have two kids now that are 10 and 12. They were born in outside of Livingston, Montana, at basically on the shores of the Yellowstone River and at the base of the Absaroka Range, sort of at the original entrance of Yellowstone National Park. And, that to me is wild and scenic and beautiful and exposed and raw. And so now we live in Maine, but I'm kind of the lone wolf of Parley. They've been trying to get me to move full time to the city for quite some time, and I keep on saying, yeah, I'm definitely moving there. I'm definitely moving there. That's been going on for about 5 or 6 years, but it's a really great opportunity for me to be able to do what I do and go into the city, get a lot of work done at the office, be with the team, but also be able to travel to places like Bali and places like the Maldives and Australia and also live in Maine. I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. Like, just, you mentioned the Maldives. I've been to the Maldives 4 times. The first time I went there was just with my wife, just for a bit of a holiday. I was like, wasn't really thinking about surfing or anything like that. It was more just hanging out. But I got there and I just couldn't get over how beautiful that water was. It's still the clearest water I've ever seen.
Yeah, the Maldives is like one of those other places that really brings home the magic. Yeah. It's like surreal.
Yeah, it is.
And it's wild too. A lot of people think of the Maldives as sort of this Caribbean sort of environment, this, these beautiful islands and this crystal clear flat water, but it gets angry, it's
well, that's
crazy.
What I was amazed at too. Like, then I actually got some amazing waves there that I did not expect. I always had this image of it as being like, it's where the old guys go and ride their longboards sort of place, but it's so not.
Yeah, it's not. It's, it's 1,192 islands and it stretches over about 960 kilometers of Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And that's pretty large in scale.
Yeah.
And so we, anyway, sort of the original story of my arrival in the Maldives, I was sort of in the initial few years of Parley, we were really starting to focus our attention on marine plastic pollution. And Paul Watson, as well as Alison Teal, gave us sort of an intro to this woman living in Malé named Shahina Ali. And she said the message was that her islands are drowning in plastic. And so I gave her a phone call and had this conversation with her, started asking her questions like, okay, where are the Maldives again? Okay, what island do you live on? And I was like kind of drawing this map on a piece of paper. Yeah. And she was starting to get really frustrated with me. She's like, you just need to come here. And I was like, okay, all right, I hear you.
Everything's an island. Like,
Yeah.
the airport is an island. You
That's
get a boat
right.
to another island.
Yeah, I could not comprehend sort of what I know now. So I arrived in Male, and Shahina picked me up on her scooter, and sort of what the relationship that was started there was one that I consider her my family, and she's an amazing woman, certified diver, PADI instructor, has basically given her whole life to protecting the ocean and protecting what she loves. And we knew very on at Parley that these are the type of individuals, these are the ocean champions that we really need as our lifeblood. And she showed me the northern atoll. She showed me the southern atoll. She showed me that every one of these 1,192 islands had plastic on it. And it was unbelievable what we found on these beautiful paradise landscapes. Every single white beach at high tide mark had just this rim of plastic, and the plastic stretched all up into the greenery and plants and trees. And yeah, it was like, kind of a wake-up call in a sense that, no matter where you go, no matter what ocean you cross, no matter what beach you walk on, no matter what community you live in, that plastic pollution is really wreaking havoc.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed listening to Nev Hyman over the last month. He's been in Bali, and he's really talking a lot about, as opposed to, he's not talking about plastic as a problem. He's talking about plastic as a resource. And it's an untapped resource. How do you feel about that line of thought?
Well, on a personal level and both on a business level, I think plastic is certainly a resource. I mean, we've proven, Parley has proven that we can go to a place like the Maldives. We can put in some infrastructure and capacity with a lot of education and communication, and start collecting material and utilizing it in an upcycled way. Mm-hmm. We can build, millions of pairs of shoes out of PET that's collected on beaches and on coastlines and out of communities. The problem I have with that idea is we've had 20 plus years to look at ways to put in systems which can collect waste and recycle it. And recycling has failed on every single level. And so now we're seeing a pretty ambitious platform generated by the industry, which is now putting another $1.5 billion into a system that's already failed. And what we're going to see is we're going to see more infrastructure and more capacity in places, like Sydney, Australia, like New York. And what we're going to also see is a drastic increase in crisis mode in small island developing states and places that really don't have the infrastructure. This material, plastic, is a design failure. It can't live in nature. And we, as human beings, as our population grows and grows and grows, are consuming this material at such a rate that not one program, not one sort of idea of, taking this material and turning it into something good can keep up with it.
So like the goals and objectives of Parley then are to think really creatively about addressing this problem?
Yeah, Parley...
thinking outside the box?
Yeah, Parley was born with this idea that we had to be the peacekeeper between mankind and the sea. And we had to sort of create a healthy balance again. And we did this and we're doing this in a lot of different ways. Our focus is to end marine plastic pollution. And we've developed a strategy called AIR. So it's avoid, intercept, and redesign, really born from every second breath we take is generated by the ocean. Avoid single-use plastic where we can. We have to get out of virgin plastic. We have to continue, like Nev has said, to intercept it from communities and coastlines, beaches, the ocean where we can, which is a whole nother topic we can discuss. But most importantly, like if we do anything, we have to put our time and energy and focus into material science. We have to look at what we're calling the next revolution, which is the material revolution. We have to look to the creative industries, look to designers. We're here at Potato Head this week celebrating Future Design Week, and really the future is now. Like we have to create a sense of urgency around the world with brands, with governments, with scientists, with consumers, and most importantly, with designers, that we need to design products and materials that really make sense for humanity, for the health of the ocean.
Since you've been here, and like last night at Potato Head, and I think you had 2 nights here, didn't you? Is there any ideas that have really stood out to you that have sort of resonated with you as something that's really compelling?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Future Design Week or Future Design, and hats off to Dan and Ronald and Sarah and the team here at Potato Head for, working with us and really doing all the grunt work to put this whole thing together. It's really about, creating a message, a global message that the future of humanity lies in the hands of the creative industries. People like Nev that didn't have these great ideas to take waste and turn it into something like housing. For Parley to take waste and turning it into a product that becomes a key messenger for the ocean. When Parley first began, it was really creating the space of collaboration. And, product wasn't necessarily on our agenda, which is a little bit of a misconception now because you do see a lot of Parley and Addy product out there. The first shoe that we introduced with Adidas was nothing but a concept shoe, and it was a derivative out of a Sea Shepherd campaign. So we had the Bob Parker of Sea Shepherd Conservation Society chasing around the Thunder, which was an illegal fishing boat out in the Southern Ocean, and what they called Operation Toothfish, which was simply going after these illegal fishing boats, which were laying 70, 80, 90, 100 kilometers of gill net out into the open ocean and taking everything that came in its wake. And, the toothfish is actually the Chilean sea bass. But, they wouldn't call that on the menu at the good 5-star restaurant, because who the hell wants to eat a toothfish? Yeah. So anyway, Sea Shepherd, tracked down the Thunder, and the captain of the Thunder sunk his own vessel. Right. And Sea Shepherd spent days and night pulling 70 kilometers of gill net out of the Southern Ocean, which we later turned into the first concept shoe. And product for us is a moment in time for Parley. It's really a way to a way to create a messenger for the ocean. So that concept shoe was really a messenger for illegal fishing. It was a messenger for marine plastic pollution. It was a messenger for murder on the high seas and the slave trade that goes on each and every day on these boats.
My next question is how, working and collaborating with multinational companies like Adidas, have you seen the biggest changes and progressions since you've been doing that? Have you seen bigger, the Adidas shoe made out of PET plastic? Do you feel like collaborating with those big companies is making the bigger difference?
Absolutely. I think, the bottom line of our approach is we have to make it lucrative to protect the ocean rather than pollute it. Okay. There has to be an economic model. There has to be a financial model that makes sense to protect our environment, and business has to drive that. So what Parley's done is really generated, this model and proof of concept. And so for us, for Parley, it's all about strategic aligning with businesses that want to take the risk, that want to make the change. We feel that the consumer now more than ever demands They know where their shirt comes from. They know where their shoe comes from. They want the materials. They want the food that has the story and the authenticity that it is working in a good way for humanity, for the environment.
So Parley's seeking to develop more of those partnerships?
Absolutely. Yeah. Our door's open. We're a global collaboration network. However, our partners have to commit. This is not a campaign to produce product for the oceans. This is a campaign to protect the ocean and marine plastic pollution, bottom line.
So as the director of Parley, maybe give us a rundown of a day in the life of Mike Long at Parley. Is it on the phone trying to talk to these kind of people, like these kind of companies? And
yeah, I think,
is it that kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis?
I think, for one, like, we don't really have any titles anymore at Parley. We're all doing so many things. I mean, each and every one of us out of that office, as well as some of our global offices, we now have rolled out in 9 countries. We have 9 country leaders. And I think we're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to steer the ship in the right direction. I do everything from go to a meeting at the United Nations to, run a production, with a brand partner to, pack giant super sacks and in my travel bags and go to beach cleanup. So it's.
And then you got to go to Bali for a few weeks, or they send you overseas and stuff like that.
Yeah. The one thing about, my job that I'm very grateful for is it allows me to, one, go to some of the most beautiful places on the planet, and also meet some of the most influential people out there, the movers and shakers of the world today, as we know it. But, with that, we're out there working on such a level that's so granular. The scope of our work is so, so big that it's very time consuming on every level, emotional, physical, mental. It's not. Yeah.
How do you manage that?
It's just one big juggling act, really. I think, like anything, you have priorities and you get what you can get done, and the rest ends up falling on the breakfast plate for the next day. So
what do you do for self-care? Do you still get in the ocean and surf much? Or?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately this week, I think, just arriving here in Bali, it's such a breath of fresh air. I mean, the food's amazing. You feel healthier in a day. You get some of that salt water and you go for an early morning surf. Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful to be traveling to places like this. And, I think it's important that we all take the time for self-care, whether it's yoga, meditation, eating right.
You do that stuff?
Yeah, I try. I try to do yoga. I'm not so good at meditation. I'm more of the yang. I was having this conversation the other day with a dear friend here in Canggu, and she was explaining to me yin and yang in a whole new light, and I realized that, She said, well, what kind of yoga are you doing? I'm like, oh, vinyasa. She's like, oh, yeah, you're really not sitting, are you? And I said, no, I don't know what it's like to sit. I'm very uncomfortable when I sit.
Same. I can't meditate either.
Yeah.
But in the last sort of year or so, I've been getting right into Wim Hof breathing. I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof. And it's a breathing technique where I guess you basically hyperventilate. Then you hold your breath for as long as you can. And that's the only time I can actually be still, when I'm holding my breath and struggling. And a friend of mine said to me, that's meditation. There you go, you're meditating. I'm like, I thought I was just holding my breath. But yeah, anyway, it's interesting. I've got one more question for you. Is what would you say are some of Parley's most significant achievements to date? What would you consider your landmark achievements at Parley, or the company or the organization's landmark achievements? Yeah,
I think overall, creating and innovating this new way to look at activism and conservation. I mean, we are at the heart of what we do. We are an environmental organization, but we're able to create and innovate a whole new sort of way to approach a cause or an initiative. I think that's probably, the biggest asset we have. I think in the trenches, really being able to go to a place like the Maldives and team up with some of the brightest people on this planet within the local communities and generate a program that was impactful right from the start. So, taking a look at the way that they were dealing with plastic, which was putting it on a boat and delivering it to a burning coral reef. And granted, it's you can't even point fingers at that because these places are dealing with such amount of material, such an amount of plastic when they, there was a moment in time, not too long ago that this material didn't exist. That it was, the organics, that it was the coconut leaves. In fact, it's interesting. Here in Bali, I was visiting at the school you teach at the Green School, and I went next door to grab some takeaway food. We were in a hurry to get to our next meeting, and I ended up getting my food in this box that was made from palm leaves and coconut leaves, and it was beautiful. And even the soy sauce and the beets and the kimchi were in their own individual little bowls made from a leaf.
So I've become used to it, but I guess
and it was interesting because I was headed to future design, and I was like, I'm in New York, and we can't go get takeaway anymore because you end up with a paper bag or a plastic bag filled with 8-10 pieces of plastic.
Yeah,
and it never ends. And I thought, man, I had to come all the way to Bali to go get some takeaway food that was put into a box that I don't feel bad throwing out the window.
And it's often done out of necessity by the locals because they want to maximize their profits and not have to pay for plastic to put their stuff in.
So getting back to your question, I think Parley, making these ambitious moves, these risky moves to go to these places that everyone else on the planet was turning their cheek to, and to sort of set up, operationally in a way that's building community advocacy, building community capacity, a robust education platform, but also taking plastic waste, baling it, and getting it off the island through a simple concept of reverse logistics, and then having complete transparency and knowing where that plastic is being sent and knowing what it's becoming. Mm-hmm. Today, recycling, we have no idea where this stuff is going, or even if it's being upcycled or recycled.
The processes themselves are toxic.
Yeah. I think, and the next step, I think for us, again, in this next big achievement, you're going to see really bringing in the pieces to the tile to really make this amazing mosaic of material scientists, of innovators, of designers to really invent our way out of this mess.
Is that part of the organization's strategic plan?
Oh, absolutely. We see...
how many strategic goals do you have at the moment?
Yeah, I think, for us, it's to end marine plastic pollution, and we do that in a lot of different ways. Direct action, education, product fiction, and material science. The material revolution is sort of our ambitious look at changing plastic forever, and we've set a deadline of 2030. So we as designers, it stemmed from this idea that in 2048 we learned from a couple of scientists that we would see the collapse of commercial fishing as we know it. So what that means is there's going to be no more big fish in the sea, and that's scary. Mm-hmm. But 2048 is a long ways off, and so I think when you say, "Oh, hey, in 2048 something's going to happen," people are like, "Oh, okay," and go back to accepting the
It's not
plastic
as
bag at the
tangible.
store. Right. But for us, for Parley, we're working off 2 6-year terms. So we have, this idea of from 2018, which is when we started this campaign around material, to 2030 is really an ambitious movement to bring in anybody and everybody around innovation, around design, to really look at better materials. And not just plastic, everything that we're using that's harmful.
Yeah, that's really inspirational. Well, Mike, it's been epic. It's been about 50 minutes.
Yeah.
You have got a hectic schedule. You seem like you thrive in that hectic space of chaos.
Of chaos, yeah.
Beautiful chaos.
Yep. I enjoy it.
I know you're very in demand, and I really appreciate your time today. And I also appreciate the time of your children who are sitting patiently waiting for Dad to spend some Sunday with them. So,
no, thank you so much for having me. And, I think it's always important to share the story and share the message and provide some inspiration in whatever way we can. And I think, one of the things that the ocean gives us and these places like we're sitting here now here at Bali give us is inspiration. So, whatever we can do and to keep up the fight and
Bali is inspirational, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's this place of contrast.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with a few people that I had just met here recently who have moved their families here, as well as locals. Like, it's such a it's like this epicenter right now to me of like not just well-being but the future. Yeah. I really think that Bali has a way to, one, the light is being shined on it, and two, it's almost accepting it, and I think it has a way to influence this sort of overall global movement and this global challenge.
I agree. I mean, it's extreme. It's from one extreme to the other, and I think because it does have some extreme issues, it's actually inspiring extreme creative thought.
Yeah,
and it's really interesting to watch. So.